Welcome everyone. I am Tangier and this is Transparency Saves Lives, where we are creating safe spaces for healing and empowerment. Welcome to my podcast. So today I want to talk about growing up with a parental figure who had a mental illness. And the reason why I want to shed light on this is because how we grow up and the things that we experienced in our childhood directly impacts how we perceive life in our adulthood and how we relate to others. So by unpacking my childhood and some of the traumatic experiences that I had that at the time I didn't think were traumatic, I'm hoping that you guys watching will kind of start to unpack your childhood and really pinpoint some of those things that you went through growing up that contributes to how you see things now, the type of people you date, and just like your overall perception of the world and life and anything else that you may be struggling with. So my grandmother, bless her soul, she is no longer here. She was diagnosed with schizophrenia. And I didn't know that growing up. I was told when I got older that that's when she was diagnosed, or maybe when I was in high school. I don't remember when, but that's not something that I was necessarily aware of growing up, because she was in the church and she wasn't necessarily getting any or seeking any medical help for her mental illness. I want to say kind of got brushed under the rug. Once she started church and accepted Jesus, it was kind of like, I guess, accepted that she was healed. But my childhood experience said otherwise. And although, I experienced a lot of interesting things with my grandmother, I do believe in my deepest of heart that everything that she did out of love. I don't think she was like an evil person at all. Maybe she had some narcissistic characteristics, but I think it was more so as a result of schizophrenia and her own childhood traumas, not necessarily like intentionally trying to be hurtful or manipulative or any of those things. So I just want to preface that with that. This is not to like demonize my grandmother or anything of that nature. Like I said, it's really just to show how when you grow up with a parental figure that is not all mentally there, how it can impact you as an adult. So a few of the most recognized symptoms of schizophrenia would be hallucinations, delusions, and disorganized thinking. From my experience, I didn't really experience my grandmother having hallucinations, although obviously that had to be a part of her journey at some point in order to be diagnosed with schizophrenia. I more so dealt with or experienced disorganized thinking and probably delusions, but I didn't think at the time that they were delusions or disorganized thinking because she was my grandmother. I was a kid, and when you're a kid, you look up to your parental figure. You think that they are God, in a sense, because they are all you know. They are never wrong. They are always right, until you get to like a certain age where you're able to start really critically thinking about some of the things that they do and say. And that's usually like sometime around high school, definitely adulthood. So like I said, I didn't think that there was anything wrong with my grandmother or anything wrong with how I grew up. The most impactful thing that I experienced as it related to her disorganized thinking and possibly her delusions, that greatly impacted me was having to sit and listen to her talk for as long as she felt like talking. And I know off the top that might not sound like it's this like huge big thing, but it was more so, I remember growing up more so feeling trapped. Like there was necessarily no dialogue. Imagine someone just doing a monologue for as long as they feel necessary, and you're a child. And so I would literally have to sit there and listen to her monologue about things that made absolutely no sense to me. It ranged from anywhere as much as like the Bible and her thoughts on the Bible and how she personally interpreted the Bible, to like relationships. I remember one of the most impactful things my grandmother ever said to me about men was that they just want to use you. Like they'll just what did she say? It was like she said something along the lines of like, like you're like a flower and they want to pluck you up and then discard you. Like that that was very I never forgot that clearly. And unfortunately, you know, words do have power. And so I feel that I did experience that to a degree in my adulthood in dealing with men. Um, and I will say that it's unfortunate that a lot of women do have that experience. And I think that she was only speaking from the experience that she had. And because she's not here, it's not my place to really share her story of, you know, as far as some of the things that I know that happened to her in her childhood. But I do know that, you know, she did have a very traumatic childhood. So from her experience, I guess that was her take on men and how men related to women. And so that was one of the things that she said to me. And unfortunately, that was one of the things that played out in my life in relation to men. But I said all that to say, like, just having to sit there and listen to her monologue and feel trapped. For me, it breeded powerlessness. I always felt powerless to do anything in those moments. And I just remember always feeling so angry and not being able to express that anger, not being able to voice that anger. It would just boil on the inside. And so for me, you know, that translates over more into like passive aggressiveness, not expressing how I really feel as an adult until I'm really ready to explode or until I'm at my breaking point. That translated into me being in an abusive relationship due to feeling powerless as a child and carrying, or as, yeah, well, as a child, because even middle school, high school is still a child, feeling powerless as a child, and then taking those feelings of powerlessness into my adulthood and into my relationships with men and with friends, with others. So that was very impactful to me, and it played a huge role in how I related to others. Another thing that I witnessed growing up was, you know, my grandparents arguing all the time and just them saying hurtful things to each other. And so for me, growing up in that environment, I remember saying to myself that I never wanted to do that. I never wanted to argue. I never wanted to be in that position of arguing with someone. It was very uncomfortable being a child and growing up in that type of environment. And so what that did for me as a result, as an adult, is that made me highly non-confrontational. It made me highly averse to confrontation, to the point where I would rather let someone walk over my boundaries or disrespect my boundaries instead of saying, hey, don't do that. I don't like that. This is not what I want. It made me super submissive to the point of accepting abuse, because, you know, I didn't want to like be difficult and just rehashing it. Sorry, I'm just like kind of like living in the moment and in and out. But I'm just kind of like feeling that fear of confrontation and how it still plays out. You know, I've grown a lot from it. I have a much healthier relationship with my husband now, where, you know, I can come to him and be like, hey babe, you know, I didn't like this when this happened, and, you know, can we talk about that and this and that. But it took me a while to get to that place of being able to speak up and express how I feel about certain things, even when, you know, it comes to like, you know, my mom or my sisters. Like if I feel offended or like I feel hurt by something, I've gotten to a place where I feel more comfortable sharing that with them, whereas before I just would have called myself just like letting it go or sliding it to the side, but really I'm deep down holding it in, and I am disrespecting myself in a sense. And when you disrespect yourself, that impacts your self-esteem, because if you don't esteem yourself high enough to respect yourself, then you won't expect others, you know, to respect you. And so that, you know, can cause low self-esteem, or impacts or contribute to low self-esteem. I would say another thing that was so very impactful to me as related to my grandmother is, I remember I was in 8th grade. This is how impactful it was, because I remember what grade I was in, and I remember the assignment. We had done an autobiography in 8th grade where we talked about our family and, you know, ourselves and things of that nature. And at the end, we had to do a poem. I remember that I compared myself to a lion, and I said, because I'm strong. I'm like a lion because I'm strong. I remember, like, you know, letting my grandmother read my autobiography, and I was like so proud, like, yeah, I did that. and she read my poem about how I was strong like a lion, and she said to me, "You're not strong because you're a woman." And then she went into this whole lecture about how, you know, women are the weaker vessel and, you know, men are stronger. And I know she was coming from a biblical perspective, but as a child, when you are having those moments of self-accomplishment and, you know, those self-esteem building moments, and to have your parental figure or your adult figure knock you down in those moments, even if it's unintentional, it definitely can impact your self-esteem in ways that you could not even imagine. And I never forgot that. I don't think I ever directly or consciously told myself like, dang, I guess I'm not strong. But I will say that, like, now that I think about it subconsciously, you know, I've been through a lot of things. And if you watched episode 1, I kind of hinted on some of those things that I've been through. And I'll be talking about in more depth those things that I've been through, like homelessness, abusive relationships. Considering all of the things that I've been through, I never really acknowledge or see or even feel just how strong I actually am. And now that I'm thinking about it, I'm sure it subconsciously has something to do with being told as a child that I was not strong because I'm a woman. I just hope that by me going down a trip of memory lane, and connecting the dots of the things that I experienced in my childhood and how they directly impacted me and, you know, still impact me as an adult. Again, I really hope that you are able to sit down and do some self-reflection on some of the things that you experienced growing up and how it impacts, like I say, the decisions that you make, the things that you struggle with, and the relationships that you get in. A lot of times we date people who remind us of our parents or the people who raised us, the people who are most impactful in my life. Unfortunately, I remember my ex-husband. One of the things I remember thinking to myself when we were having like a little episode or whatever, I remember looking at him and then seeing my grandmother, like, dang, like, I don't know. So it was wild. So really think about that. Like, is the person that you're with now, do they remind you of someone from your past? And if so, who? Was that person a positive figure in your life, or was that person a negative figure in your life? My husband now, when I think about it, he reminds me in little ways of my grandfather. And as I've become an adult, I realized that outside of my stepdad, my grandfather was the consistent male presence in my life. My grandfather taught me how to ride a bike. He taught me how to play checkers and how to play spades. And he was my dad up until, you know, my mom got married and my stepdad, you know, took over. So I have married someone who is like the positive male role model in my life growing up. And I'm really glad about that. So after listening to this episode, or whenever you get a chance, do some self-reflection. Think about the experiences you had growing up as a child and see if you can find any correlations to how you carry yourself now as an adult, the friends you surround yourself with, the challenges that you keep finding yourself in. A lot of times we keep cycling through the same challenges over and over until we get past that point, until we grow past it, and the type of people that you date. So I really hope this episode has been helpful for you. Please, 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 if you would like to be on one of these episodes to share your story, click the link in the bio or in the description box, depending on where you're looking at this. Or if you're listening on a podcasting platform, then go to my Instagram, I am Tangier, and click the link in the bio, where you can find my sign-up sheet, because I don't want to just share my story. I always say, and I'm going to keep saying, I really want to share your story. I want to hear your story. There is someone out here who needs to hear your story. They need your story. So until next time, remember that your story matters and you deserve to have it heard, because transparency saves lives.